The Adidas Adios Pro 3, 150 plus miles deep. Is this shoe still race worthy? Let's talk about it. So before we get into the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed, watching content, thanks so much. I love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates and things like that. So without further ado, let's begin. Specs for the shoe, somewhere up here. And we'll begin with the good stuff right away, because this is what we care about as we start breaking into the 150, 200, 250, 300 mile range, right? It's going to be the outsoles of the shoes at this point in time. So that's going to be our left foot. This is our right foot. Cool. Pretty understandable at this point. It's they're taking quite a beating, but here's what I like so far when we talk about this. Let's go look at the one that's doing worse, which is my right foot. So just this past week, I was running with the shoe a little bit more while I was out in Austin, Texas. So, you know, different climate, different types of surfaces. I went out for a business trip. I went to Houston, then I went to Austin, like as part of a vacation piece kind of deal. And I also went to Run Labs to go get, you know, a physical assessment of my current running conditions. So we'll talk about what I learned from that experience and how we're going to apply it to the damage we see here. But as you can see, the outside of the shoe is still taking quite a beating, and it's the Continental rubber is starting to fall apart a little bit quicker than I thought it was going to. You can also see this yellow piece of the rubber is also beginning to fuse a little bit with the black piece up in this top area. This could be just a case of like physical push. It could be just the heat of which I was running at, or it could be just a mix of both, because again, two things can be true at the same time in this particular case, right? We can also see that the foam that was in this area is starting to get chopped up a lot, which tells you another story as to where my strike point with my foot ends up being in this particular shoe. And yeah, other than that, I see that the rods for the carbon plate or fiberglass plate, as you want to call it, fun story with that as we get to it. Still in pretty good shape on this shoe from what I can see. The heel is doing okay, not too much wear. And the foam on the outside is just a little dirty, but there isn't any particular, I would say, wrinkling that's occurring in spots that has me concerned. Because once we see this very specific wrinkles, I know the foam is going to start degrading, and I'm going to start losing a little bit of the offset or the drop of the shoe as a result. So that's what's going on the right foot. Kind of the same story we've been seeing mostly. But here's what I like kind of the best, is that I'm also experiencing that similar damage in the left foot. So when I see a symmetrical type of damage like this, two things are happening. One, I'm running in a shoe that is better, not perfect for my running style, but also it's showing that the shoe itself is wearing out in an even pattern. So like I'm getting a more confident answer that at 150 miles, like the shoe is wearing out the way it's supposed to, as opposed to like the Vaporfly Next Percent series when I would run 200 miles in the particular shoe. Like I would just rip the rubber entirely to the point where I saw the carbon plate and the other shoe looked like perfect, right? So does the shoe's lifespan last 250 miles, or does it last way more and I'm just a bad runner? It's most likely the latter as the answer, right? Maybe the shoe isn't particularly built for my foot. So that's probably a good place to transition to right here, right? While I was in Run Labs, some of the things we were assessing was just my my physical shape, my anatomy as a whole. And what we learned were two things, which I guess we can tie into the shoe review. One of which is that I do have what's called femoral anteversion, and for me, I'm just like born and just existed like that, right? So when we talk about that, it means, I guess, well, here we go. I guess we'll show you some demonstrations, right? In my running shorts as I'm about to do my second run here. But femoral anteversion, I guess let's also like push this a little bit. It's basically when, like, if I stand still perfectly, what's happening is my knees will tend to kind of bend inwards, right? And the femurs and basically my legs will kind of lean more inwards naturally than they will outwards, right? So what happens with that, usually, is that my feet will also have some kind of pronation or some kind of not necessarily misalignment, but it's more likely that something like that will be found, right? So in my case, in terms of alignment, my right foot is okay. There isn't any bowing or anything like that in my foot. My big toe and my knee line up straight to my hip, whereas in my left foot, I have a little bit of bowing in my tibia, and my left foot leans inward a little bit. So if like I have to stand naturally with my shoes, this being my left and this being my right, naturally I should be standing a little bit something like this, right? Just slightly uneven, but that's natural. But like while you're running and you study different forms and your brain is starting to take in like different forms and shapes while you're running, it starts adjusting accordingly, right? So what happens as a result of this in particular is that having a shoe with a lower offset, or lower drop in this case, is ultimately better for my running, because it's going to help align my big toe with my knee and with my hip in this case, because then it's going to allow my foot to sink in and have the big toe kind of sink in more than it will be if I wore something, not actually particularly like this shoe, but something like the Tempo Next Percent, which I've talked about ad nauseum on this channel, which I've destroyed ad nauseum on this channel. A shoe that has a high heel raise and then pushes your foot sort of outward, right? And as a result of that, I've popped the AirPods in those shoes dozens of times, because I'm forcing my foot way more outward into like the 4th and 5th metatarsal, and I'm just putting way too much pressure on that shoe with a running form that isn't meant for that shoe. Let's put it that way. So, okay, all tangents aside, what does that mean here? First and foremost, based on the wear, it's not, my running form is better than it was before for this particular shoe, but it's not perfect, right? So when we talk about the shoes that will work best for me, it's recommended I begin at like 4 millimeters. Okay, that's the offset that I want. Whether it's high stack, mid stack, low stack, or no stack, really just depends on what I'm training for. So in the case of marathon, high to mid stack is okay, right? And then of course this is a higher stack shoe than usual. So if this shoe is about 6.5 to 7 millimeters offset, it's a little bit higher than where I need it, but it's not the threshold of where it goes too far and I'm not getting the appropriate energy return I would be looking for, okay? So that being said, this wear is much better than something like the Vaporfly Next Percent 2s or 1s that I've had previously, but it's not exactly where I need it as a race day shoe. Did I have fun with this shoe as a race day shoe? Absolutely. Is this a great race day shoe? Totally. Is it the best one I can use right now? Probably not. So if we're looking for a shoe with that 4 millimeter offset, we would be looking at something more like the Alphafly 1s, the Metaspeed Sky, the Hoka Carbon Rocket X. Like that's kind of the direction I would be going into to explore this theory of whether a lower drop is the shoe I'm looking for. But again, this is a massive tangent. All I'm just trying to say is that if you have similar, I guess, anatomy to me, where you have this like femoral anti-version, this shoe will be good, but it's not the best that you can get, if you kind of catch my drift. So other things worth noting in this case is the upper is still in really good condition for the shoes. It's a little bit dirty because of dust and things like that, but there's no ripping like I would have experienced in the Boston 11s, right? Other things, I guess, to consider, or something that is on my watch list here when it comes to the fiberglass plate of this shoe. So thank you, comment section, for clarifying that. I call it the carbon plate by habit, but in this particular case it is more of a fiberglass compound in this plate. At some point or another I was tying this shoe and I heard something that sounded like glass cracking while I was tying the shoe, and it's possible that in my left foot I may have cracked the plate. Now I can't really prove it without cutting the shoe in half and kind of looking at it. I don't see a performance drop of any sort at this time, but it's going to be curious to see when I get to 200, 250 miles if I see some sort of abnormalities while I'm running in the left foot or with the left shoe, right? So all in all, 150 plus miles deep. It's still in awesome race condition. The bottoms are a little bit beaten up more than usual on one foot than the other. The grip is still kind of holding on, but we are approaching that point where it is starting to fall off ever so slightly. I would not recommend running in this shoe in the rain as of right now, just because I tried it while I was out in Austin. I was experiencing a little bit of slip. But again, even when the shoe is brand new, it would not be my first choice for rainy conditions, just based on how much rubber, compound, and foam is kind of existing, right? And then again, just as a road race shoe, a daily trainer or a daily racer kind of shoe, still holds up really well. I'm starting to experiencing, I think we'll start seeing a little bit more of a drop as we get to the 200 plus mile point. But yeah, as of this point, I'm just going to keep running with it until I start getting my other race day shoes as a testing point, right? We're talking like the Metaspeed Sky, we're talking the Carbon Rocket X, those 4mm offset shoes compared to this like 6.5, 7 sort of offset. So we'll see if it makes a difference anatomically. We'll see if there is a significant difference between both shoes respectively, and there will be a comparison as we get to that point. But yeah, the Adidas as it stands alone, still an awesome shoe, still a fan of this brand. Yeah, we'll just see where it goes 50 to 100 plus miles from here. So if you have similar opinions or like thoughts on this, you know, leave a comment below. If you agree or disagree with the assessment, or you have some cool thoughts or theories as to what may have happened with this cracking sound in the shoe, let me know. But yeah, we'll just leave it at this. So thanks again for watching. See you guys in the next one.